Hello, and welcome to the Glassmoon Podcast series. I'm Susanne Jacobs. I'm an organisational behaviour and performance specialist focusing on trust, psychological safety and intrinsic motivation. My work is based on nearly 30 years of corporate and leadership experience and over a decade of research into the neurobiology of human performance and what truly motivates people to think and act differently. I'm the founder of The Seven and author of The Drivers, Creating Trust and Motivation at Work. I now work across industry sectors to help organisations establish human leadership and inclusive environments where people feel engaged, energised and inspired to contribute. So we're in the midst of a workplace context being shaped by several major factors. Technology, climate change, a global pandemic, demographic and attitudinal changes, a looming recession, and of course, we are entering the fourth industrial era. There are many risks to our health, productivity and motivation, but there are also many opportunities for us to grasp. This podcast series looks at the rise of the human organisation, how we can reshape and reimagine a workplace fit for humans, rather than has been since the first industrial revolution, we have tried to fit humans into the workplace. Across the series, I am delighted to be with Carole Edmond. Carole is the founder and CEO of Glassmoon. She has spent over 30 years working on healthcare, early education, work-life services, and more recently, specialist care for adults with complex needs. Her advisory work spans across industry sectors, with leading investment funds advising on market entry strategies, with a core expertise on people, culture, and performance integration. She has spent over a decade researching high-performance leadership, female attainment, and the intersection of career and work-life priorities. Carole's focus now is motivated by the desire to create 21st century services which truly understands people and enables better working lives, better organisations, and of course, a better world. So, together, we will be bringing you the intersection of our research, the science and our experience, exploring many topics on how to humanise the workplace and why those organisations that can do this through every aspect of their business with social purpose at the core will win.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, and I'm joined today by Carole Edmond, founder of Glassmoon. So my job today is to hear the story of Glassmoon, the vision, the journey and the guiding principles. So Carole, Glassmoon, love the name. What's the story behind it?
Well, so first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here talking about Glassmoon and our business and our journey. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and for us to be having a conversation. So I'm delighted to have the chance. I think Glassmoon in terms of where does the story start? Because there's always the story behind the story and the backstory to that. But I think the actual name manifested about 5 years ago when I was doing the thesis and I was doing some research on gender equality and social mobility. And I was sort of really in the depths of research and literature and people's stories and the data points and really frustrated about some of the barriers and the bias and the limiting beliefs that were coming out in people's stories. And I remember one night sat in my study and looking up, and it was the most beautiful, beautiful full moon, and just thinking, God, if it was clear between here and there, we could just get to the moon without people kind of getting in our way, wouldn't that be great? And having read about lots of glass barriers, the glass cliff, the glass ceiling, glass floor, I've come through a few of them, dealt with a few of them myself in my own career. The two names just kind of came together, glass, moon, if we could navigate the glass barriers and get to the moon, that kind of moonshot opportunity. And that's really how it came about in 2015, before we really even had a business, when it was just a name for an idea for something that might come together. And the kind of story behind the even staring at the moon and the fascination with that is my dad was always convinced that I came about, for want of a better description, when Neil Armstrong landed in the moon, and he'd always called me his moon baby. So that's the sort of story behind the story, really.
Oh, wow. Do you know, I mean, it really resonates with me. I mean, I'm with you on the older glass cliffs and the glass floors that I've certainly come up against. But that is so positive, isn't it? Rather than the negative connotations around it, but it's just the ability to be able to reach the moon without those barriers and biases and beliefs in between. And I love that bit about your dad, glass moon baby. But do you know what I'm also really interested in is there's a story behind the name itself, but there's obviously a journey that you're on as well. But why take this journey? What is it that you're looking to be able to give and make the impact?
Yeah, and when I think about the journey, when did the journey start? Did the journey start that night I came up with the name? Did it start when I sort of assembled the team when I came out of my exec role in Regard last summer, came out of garden leave, was on my period of sort of restrictive covenant. Some of the team had left from Regard not long after I left, and we decided that we were going to assemble ourselves under Glassmoon and start looking at building our own organisation, or did it actually start a very long time ago? And I think about today. So today is the 1st of June, and it's always been a significant date for me because it's the date that I started in Bupa as an 18-year-old, so 32 years ago, very long time ago, as a young woman who'd done a year in the steel industry, which I figured out fairly quickly that wasn't the kind of industry for me. And as a sort of working class Scottish lass, managed to get this job in this posh company in Bupa in Edinburgh, and started, and that was really the start of I guess what was a job, at the time, but very quickly developed into a career, and developed into a life-changing journey. I had the most amazing experiences in Bupa in the nearly 21 years that I was there. But I think the most pivotal point that put me on this journey to Glassmoon, if you like, is when I was given a entrepreneurial opportunity back in 1997 by the first female CEO of Bupa, Val Gooding, amazing woman who said, we're going into the elder care market, and I think we should be doing something for children and young families to expand the brand, and I'd like you to stay and do it. And so I think when I really think about the sort of career journey and when did it really start, when did it really take off, when did I get that opportunity that very few people get, which is to start, do a startup, do a company from literally a blank bit of paper in a corporate environment. And I guess it was then, because that put me on this trajectory to build an organization and contribute to building what I see as social infrastructure in this country. And that took me on an incredible journey to build a business in Bupa, which became a top 10 operator within 3 years. And then it was sold to Bright Horizons in 2009, and I joined the organisation. Wasn't originally going to stay, and then stayed for 6 years, and we really transformed and turned that organisation into a phenomenal company that's the leading provider in both B2B and for parents in terms of nursery provision and workplace services. And then left there 5 years ago to spend a bit more time with my daughter and finish my research endeavours around gender equality and women in leadership. And I guess that's when I had the idea that at some point I was going to want to do my own thing with my own team properly. But I wasn't quite ready to do it in 2006, 2007 sort of came along, and I got an opportunity to become involved with Regard, which is an adult social care businesses providing specialist care to people with learning disabilities, complex needs, mental health, acquired brain injuries. And I went into the business originally to sort of strengthen the management team to get it ready for sale, and ended up falling in love with the sector and the business, and stayed for 2 years and left last year. And I'm now dedicating my time completely to Glassmoon. But I think that last executive experience for me was when the journey kind of really came together in terms of the various different points. That I'm a massive believer in systems thinking and systems leadership, and joining the dots that we sometimes don't think are connectable. suddenly you take that step back and you see them all as connectable, and you realise that you've been on this pathway, this career pathway, and all of these roads have led you to a certain point, and that's where we are in the 3 different business models that we're developing in Glassmoon currently.
That's fantastic. And I just love the way you articulate around those pivotal moments and how for you those dots have joined across your own path, and actually all of those opportunities and the opportunities that you took as well led you to where you are right now. And as you've always said to me, we're a sum of all our experiences, and even if at one point they were long forgotten, they're still there, they're still coming back, they're still informing and sometimes helping us, sometimes hindering us. But ultimately, setting up Glassmoon and the journey that you've been on to get to the point of where you are now, what's your vision for Glassmoon? And I'm often a little bit coy about sort of saying what's the vision. What I really want to get to here is I'm a huge believer in a sense of purpose and linking to that purpose. So it's the why. Why are you doing this? Where do you want this to go? What's your why for actually setting up and taking Glassmoon on its own journey?
Yeah, and I think the reason we want to kind of do it from scratch is because we want to do things differently. We want to change status quo. And I remember reading a long time ago that it's very hard to change the institution when you're in the institution. And I use the word institution broadly and loosely because I think that can cover a multitude rather of organisational settings. And I think having been at the managing director, the CEO, the executive level, the boardroom level, particularly as a woman, even in 2020, even in the 21st century, it is tough to be able to bring our whole self to work. It's tough to bring our feminine energy, for example, to create workplaces and jobs and career pathways and services for vulnerable members of our society, be that young children in terms of, when I was running the childcare business, or in regard supporting vulnerable adults, creating the kind of 21st modern day services that really are person-led and they're demand-led and they're not as a function of failings in a system that largely is a function of the first industrial revolution and 19th century working and thinking and command and control. And so that notion that you can't change the institution whilst you're in it, having worked at the level and been in the C-suite where you would think if there's any role that you can make changes and make things happen, it would be at that level. You realize that sometimes there's just a level of momentum that you've got to kind of step off that treadwheel, step out of that momentum, draw breath, and gather your thoughts and your thinking and experience. And in terms of the practical experience, as well as the the reading, the research, the studying, some of the kind of more wacky things that I've done, like when I came out of Bright Horizons, I did stand-up comedy training for 10 weeks, which was terrifying and fantastic in equal measure. But take all of those lived experiences, being a parent, being a daughter to an elderly mother, all of those things, and saying, if we're running businesses and we're creating new business models and we're creating new services, let's do it in a way that's going to work for the 21st century, for modern day living and being, as opposed to just continuing to replicate the ways that we've always had to do it because we're stuck in a system that's broken. Let's create a new system. And I think that's the sort of vision. It's how do we create great work environments where the people who are delivering the services, have got environments where they're trusted. There's autonomy. There's this creativity. We can truly bring our whole selves to work rather than it just being a strapline on a diversity and inclusion initiatives, for example. And for the people that are in receipt of services, be that customers, patients, residents, people in receipt of services, young children, students, whoever it is, let's make sure that those services are designed for what people need and want and what's going to enable them to be their whole selves and who they are. And I think it was that sort of passion to want to change things, to want to do things a bit differently. I think you realise that actually sometimes starting again and starting from scratch and being prepared to prove the concept and eat our own lunch became more appealing than necessarily stepping into another big exec role.
Yeah, no, completely. And I picked up on what you said around being person-led. It sounds that the essence underneath here, and I want to talk to you in a minute around what is it that Glassmoon's delivering, but that humanising, purpose-led, person-led. Actually, let's deliver what those human beings, whether they be delivering or in receipt of, actually need, and how they want to be able to deliver it. I love the whole thought about being able to break the mold of the legacy of 19th century, management and science of management, because it's not working. But that's another one for a future recording. So Glassmoon, purpose-led, person-led, shifting and changing the value proposition. What is it that what are you giving? What are you providing?
Sure. So there's 3 business models that we're working under the Glassmoon group, and somebody said to me, you never do things by half. Could you start with one and then maybe add a few more? But the vision was to basically bring these 3 business models, these 3 opportunities to fruition. And so if I start with Glassmoon Strategies, which was the original Glassmoon business that we created back in 2015-16, once we had the name. I did senior advisory work and consultancy work for investors and management teams, particularly around sort of childcare, early education, educational services. And so in Glassmoon Services, effectively, we are bringing our experience, our know-how, our methodology to organisations to help them, whether that's from an M&A and an M&A integration perspective, whether it's around strategy and transformation, or whether it's around leadership and culture. And of course, one of the things I'm super excited about is the work that we're doing with you. And I know we're going to talk about that in much more detail in another recording, but the program that you and I are developing from, the work that we've done over the last sort of 20, 30 years, and, how much fun we've had in pulling that together, how much benefit my team have had from seeing us work together and seeing us collaborate and learn firsthand from the amazing stuff that you've created and produced and delivered in your work with the 7 and the drivers and the fantastic experiences that they've had from that. So that's what's in Glassmoon Services. And I think we've debated about whether it's a consultancy business. It is, because we're bringing our know-how and our kind of wisdom and experience to help other people. And it's about knowledge, it's about learning, and it's about sharing, really, in terms of what we're doing in that business. And it's the most developed, if you like, out of the 3 in terms of what's the services on offer currently. And then in terms of Glassmoon Digital, we are in the very early stages of developing a digital personal assistant from the model that I created from my research, which was originally rather boringly called the attainment model. Mm-hmm. It was originally, as you know, it was originally the female attainment model, and then I had quite a few senior men say to me, actually, this thinking and this know-how and this approach applies to me, so why is it only for women? So, of course, going back to my very early days in sales, I dropped the female, we made it attainment, and we doubled our audience. But we've developed it further now, and it's actually called Ruby, which is an acronym for resolve to ultimately be yourself. And when we say that, that's very much coming at it from a collectivist as opposed to individualistic perspective, which is traditionally what we're encouraged to, look out for ourselves and serve ourselves. And whereas with Ruby, what we are aiming to do is help people navigate their working life, their careers, their livelihood through this digital assistant in a way where we help people take their nuanced data, and it's really relevant to them, and their story and their storytelling in terms of putting this together to help them navigate to where they want to be in their careers and their working life, rather than where they end up by default. Because in my view, there's a lot of sleepwalking that goes on in relation to our careers, in terms of where we are versus where we really want to be or wish we were, or etc. So it's trying to provide ideas and insights and a fun way of engaging with an app and it's an anti-social app, in as much as the idea is not to get you addicted, so that you're on it checking you kind of whether you're breathing right, or you're taking enough steps in the day, or you've controlled your calories. It's not that kind of app. It's more long term, more longitudinal, to help you kind of be on the path that's right and proper for you. But that's early stages, but we're excited about that. And then the third business is Glassmoon Services, and Glassmoon Services will be a business for adult specialist care in the social care area, where we will look after adults with learning disabilities, support adults with mental health needs, complex needs, and acquired brain injuries. And so we're in the early stages of establishing that in the southwest. And we've been slowed down a little bit, particularly with Glassmoon Services, relative to being in lockdown and our timeline around that. But still, the plan is still the plan, and we're very much looking forward to bringing those services to fruition later this year. And of course, the methodologies and the know-how that we've got in Glassmoon strategies, and somehow we're thinking about data self-sovereignty for our digital app, is clearly going to play out very strongly in what we build in our own physical asset, our own bricks and mortar business in Glassmoon Services.
I love that. And you definitely don't do things by halves. Mind you, never have. So why am I not surprised? But what I love about those three elements is that they're all informing each other. And there is such a strong integrated and guiding principle across all of them. So from the strategies where you're sharing the knowledge, to the digital with that companion for self attainment and putting yourself back in the driving seat, all the way through to, as it were, the bricks and mortar, and providing those hands-on services. So I know how much experience you're bringing to the table, your thought leadership, your expertise, but what's behind the brand? Where is the credibility? What's the validity here? What's building this across all of those areas?
Yeah, and it's a good question in terms of, we've talked, as you can imagine, we talk a lot about the brand, because I think brands are ultimately about people, and they're about the experience that people have, either in terms of the organisation that's manifesting, that's creating, that's delivering the brand experience, or if you're on the receiving end in terms of a customer or in receipt of services. And for us, it's the kind of brand pillars, if you like, are about developing our organisations and our different business models, which you're absolutely right, they do inform each other. It's about being human. Number one, it's about being human. It's about being deeply human. And I think the experiences that I had in developing a childcare, early education, work-life services business from scratch, literally from a blank bit of paper, through to, recently when I was the CEO of Regard, and seeing the ability for teams to be able to support people with very complex needs in deeply human ways. Same with supporting young children through the early stages of their life, has always given me such an enormous sense of purpose, and it's always given me it's so heartwarming to see what incredible work can be done to ensure people have a good quality of life, or to help improve their outcomes or their life chances. And you talked earlier about the importance of purpose, and I think for me it's how do we create these deeply human businesses that are all about purpose. They're all about helping people tap into their potential, their innate potential, and create conditions where people are given opportunities, or take the opportunities, or are supported to have the opportunities to live the fullest life that they can live. And so that's what we want to sort of manifest through this part of the kind of the human part of the brand, the deeply human part of the brand, and as much as bringing that to the fore and making that priority number one. But equally, we recognise that we live in a tech world. We're on 24/7. So how can we make the best of the technology, the digitalization, the data that can be used for good, as opposed to used for just mass marketing loads of stuff that we never needed in the first place, which I think in our current lockdown scenario, we're realizing we need way less than we thought we did from a consumer or material point of view. So that's been an interesting social experiment that none of us were expecting to have. But the tech bit and combining the human experience with technology in a way that helps us and it is positive is really key for us. And then the third strand, I guess, third pillar is future. How do we make these services, these deeply human services, evolve? And people talk about being future proof, and I'm not sure we can make things future proof. I think we can get very close to it in terms of but it's about imagination, it's about creativity. How do we imagine the things today that we could, they're very tough to imagine if we don't give ourselves the time and the breathing space to do it. So the future is the realization that the future is here now. The future of work, the future of 21st century services is here now. So how can we give ourselves the time and the space and create the energy to be creative, to use our imagination, to really tap into how we continue to innovate and get things right for people in a way that is always person-led, is always deeply human, rather than sort of computer says no when we just haven't been creative enough about how we think about the workplace or delivering services. So those are the kind of three brand pillars, strands that we've really sort of shaped and that we've really got excited and passionate about. And so it's now about how does that manifest itself in the experiences that we have in building the business, and when we're working with our consultancy clients, when we're talking to commissioners about Glassmoon services and potential families and people that will be in receipt of services. And as we're building the code for our app, how do we make sure that that's baked into the DNA, that it's there in terms of this notion of having this trusted advisor that can help you, through good use of nuanced data and critical thinking, can help you reflect and review and be, as you said, in the driving seat. I did a speech a few years ago where I said, Elon Musk might be creating driverless cars, but let me tell you, it was a conference for 250 women in leadership, and I said, driverless cars is great, but our careers are not driverless. We need to be in the driving seat, and we need to have control of this. So it's, how do we combine all of that in a way that's fun, that's engaging, but also fundamentally has our well-being at the heart of it. I think that's a fundamental part of combining the human and the tech piece. Fundamentally, it's got to be about our well-being.
Yeah, no, completely. And what I also love about this is that this has been as you said, it's been a 32-year journey to this point, at least from the inauguration at Bupa, and I'm sure a bit before that as well. But I also know that behind that deeply human, future-orientated tech business, you're bringing all that experience, but you're, again, that thought leadership, but also the science, the research. What I think is fantastic is that there's a real bridge between the academia and the deep research that you've undertaken and those that are working with you have undertaken, but the bridge into the real world, that bridge into practical, sort of the appliance of the science as well, so that you can get really, really behind it. And that whole piece about putting us back in the driving seat, putting us back, or waking us up from the seat walking, and what has been for quite a while now a legacy of command and control. It's always fascinated me about how we have deeply dehumanized the workplace. That's absolutely fantastic, Carole. Thank you so much. I never ever tire of hearing about the story of Glassmoon, your story, your vision, and the purpose behind everything that you're doing. And I know it's going to go from strength to strength. So thanks ever so much. We'll obviously be getting back together again for a lot of other podcasts and recordings, and to bring you as much of the science and the information, the tools, the techniques as we possibly can, as we continue to adapt, thrive, and learn on our own Glassmoon journey. So thanks all, thanks very much, and speak to you again very soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susanne. It's been a pleasure. Thanks. See you soon.